What does one do when one has nothing to lose? Is this why Ukraine is invading Russia? Does this mean that Iran will attack Israel? A desperate man is a dangerous man. The world's two proxy wars are in their decisive phases. But decisive doesn't mean predictable. Is Wall Street too complacent about geopolitical risks in the run-up to the US elections? The Prussian military theorist Karl von Clausewitz famously wrote, "War is nothing but the continuation of politics with other means." The Ukraine war and the Gaza war both bear testimony to this insight. In the strategic competition between the unipolar and the multipolar world, war is no more than an instrument used by both sides to achieve their political aims. War may be useful, but war is also unpopular. Governments are wary that wars will bring about their own downfall before that of their enemies. This is why great powers use others to fight their wars, to do their dirty work. In the Chinese book of 36 stratagems, there's a name for this strategy. It is called killed with a borrowed knife. To understand the Ukraine war and the Gaza war, we need to first recognize that there are foremost proxy wars. The Ukraine war is a proxy war between the US and Russia, with Ukraine as the US proxy. The Gaza war is a proxy war between Iran and Israel, with Hamas as the proxy of Iran. If war is just an extension of politics, Washington's political objectives for waging a proxy war against Russia are very clear. For the China hawks in Washington, weakening Russia, China's strongest ally, will make it easier for the US to deal with China down the road. For the Atlantists in Washington, a war between Ukraine and Russia will force Europe to reduce its energy dependence on Russia and increase its dependence on the US. For America's defense establishment, the Ukraine war provides a great opportunity to recycle and upgrade America's aging military equipment and infrastructure. For the Democrats, the war is also a revenge against Russia for its supposed, even though unproven, meddling in the 2016 US elections. The US has already spent $175 billion on this war. However, if you see China as a threat and Europe as America's stooge, or if you work in the defense industry, or if you're a Democrat, you might consider this money well spent, especially given it involves no American boots on the ground and the US can walk away from the war anytime at its own choosing. Tehran's political objectives in the proxy war that it is waging against Israel are just as clear. Iran wants to destroy Israel. The October 7th attack has lowered Israel's deterrence by demonstrating that it is not invincible. The war will slow down, if not kill, any attempt at normalizing relations between Israel and Saudi Arabia. It would increase Iran's prestige in the Middle East and give it leverage in its dealings with the US. The war would bog down Israel and allow Iran to cross the nuclear threshold. Iran has no border with Israel, just like the US that has no border with Russia. However, Iran has spent the last 20 years building a ring of fire around Israel by supporting anti-Israel proxies in Lebanon, Yemen, Syria, Iraq, and Gaza. Not unlike the US, that through continued NATO enlargement now has military bases directly on Russia's doorstep. The US is a democracy that wants to protect its hegemony. Iran is an Islamic state that wants to spread its radical ideology. Until recently, both believed that they had the upper hand in the respective proxy wars that they were waging. Both believed that having someone else fight their wars means that they have staying power. And both thought that in wars of attrition, staying power is everything. Neither the US proxy war against Russia nor the Iranian proxy war against Israel is going as planned. Hamas battle planned to force Israel to fight on its terms, meaning street by street and tunnel by tunnel, has inflicted only limited casualties on the IDF, the Israel Defense Force. Meanwhile, Israel has killed 17,000 Hamas fighters and destroyed or severely weakened most of Hamas' 24 battalions before the war. Furthermore, Israel has killed many of Hamas' most senior leaders, including Ismail Haniyeh, Mohammed Dev, and Marwan Issa. Most importantly, Israel has taken control of the Philadelphia corridor and the 25 tunnels underneath it that Hamas used to smuggle weapons and arms into Gaza. The Israeli economy has been negatively affected by the war, but it has so far managed to stave off a recession, and the Israeli shekel has proved to be surprisingly resilient. Despite constant attacks on the Netanyahu government by the Israeli opposition and the international community, the approval rating of Netanyahu has been actually improving, which is giving him more leverage in the negotiation against Hamas. Russia's success in the Ukraine war is perhaps even more remarkable, given it is fighting against the combined might of the NATO. Notwithstanding initial setbacks, Russian forces have been slowly but steadily advancing in eastern Ukraine, overcoming well-defended Ukrainian strongholds. After taking Bakhmut, Avdiivka, and Marinka, Russian forces are now fighting for control of Toretsk, and they are pushing towards Pokrovsk. Like the Israelis, Russians are quick learners. Moscow has been constantly adapting its military capabilities to diminish the advantages afforded by advanced Western weapons to the Ukrainian army. Over the past few months, Russian Lancet drones and glide bombs have wreaked havoc on Ukraine's Western air defense systems and allowed Russian ground forces to accelerate their offensive without incurring high casualties. At the start of the war, I predicted that the Russian economy would perform much better than people had expected. 2 years later, notwithstanding international sanctions and the rising cost of the war, the Russian economy is forecasted by the International Monetary Fund to grow 3.2% this year, faster than most advanced economies. Both the US proxy war against Russia and Iran's proxy war against Israel are in their decisive phase. And the momentum is with Russia and Israel right now. In contrast, Hamas and Ukraine look increasingly desperate. But a desperate man is a dangerous man. What will Zelensky and Sinwar do to not lose the war? That is the million-dollar question. Both Sinwar and Zelensky see themselves as liberators of their people. But so far, neither has much to show for. Ukraine is fighting for its right to join NATO, for which it has already paid the heavy price of lost territories and hundreds of thousands of lives, not to mention ruined infrastructure and a battered economy. The sad part is that if it loses the war, it will likely never be able to join NATO. The same with Sinwar. Much of Gaza has been destroyed in the war. Tens of thousands of people have died. If Hamas loses the war, it will likely be the end of its rule in Gaza, not to mention its promise to throw the Jews to the sea. So what will Zelensky and Sinwar do now? When you have nothing to lose, you dig in, you go all in. When oil fails, you try to drag your paymasters directly into the conflict. In the case of Hamas, its only chance of reversing its inevitable defeat is if it can get Iran to attack Israel. According to a senior Iranian security official quoted in a Reuters article published on August 13, Iran would launch a direct attack on Israel if the Gaza talks fail or if it perceives Israel is dragging out the negotiations. My prediction is that there will not be a ceasefire, because Sinwar has no incentive to compromise. The only question is whether Iran will attack Israel once the ceasefire negotiations has collapsed. I don't doubt that Iran may be having second thoughts about attacking Israel. I don't doubt that Blinken is telling the Iranians that attacking Israel will boost Trump's chances in the November election. But Tehran also knows that its inaction will damage its credibility with its proxy with Israel and with its Arab adversaries. And even if Iran is willing to cut Hamas adrift, what about Hezbollah? I don't believe that Iran will stand aside if a war between Israel and Hezbollah were to break out. Given the above, I think there's at least a 1/3 chance that Iran will attack Israel. This is why I went long Brent at $77 a barrel earlier this week. What about Zelensky? Like Sinwar, Zelensky's only chance to avoid defeat is if he can somehow drag NATO directly into conflict with Russia. I don't buy the story that Zelensky suddenly decided to invade Russia last week to force Putin to redeploy his forces from Ukraine. We know Ukraine is dealing with acute shortage in both men and ammunition. Zelensky knows that moving his men and resources from defensive positions into offensive ones will only exacerbate the imbalance between the two armies in the battlefield. There has to be something more here. Perhaps Zelensky is trying to get under Putin's skin. Maybe he thinks that by invading Russia with German tanks and American artillery, he might get Putin to declare war on NATO. The point is that Zelensky has an overwhelming incentive to provoke Putin to overreact. And overreacting Putin will help Zelensky make the case to NATO that Russia is a threat to everyone and not only to Ukraine. Maybe this is why Ukraine reportedly launched an attack on the Kursk nuclear power plant earlier today. There are reports this week that Ukraine is amassing a large attack force that will soon open new fronts in the Russian Bryansk and Belgorod regions. Maybe Zelensky thinks that this might force Belarus to enter into the war. He might think that NATO won't be able to stand aside once Belarus has joined the war. A desperate man is a dangerous man. Both Sinwar and Zelensky know that their only way out is if their paymasters enter the wars directly, if World War III were to break out. The only question is whether the world will fall for it. Stay tuned.